Breaking right now, there is growing political pressure on King Charles to finally deal with the Prince Harry and Meghan Markle issue after that delusional, highly irresponsible interview on the British bashing corporation, the BBC, where Prince Harry was so nuts, he even seemed to suggest that the government is conspiring with the royal family to try and kill him. So the BBC has had to apologise for its biased coverage, and I'll come to that in just a moment. But first, this bombshell poll, which reveals most Brits say strip Harry and Meghan of their HRH titles. And the Find Out Now survey is massively conclusive. This is no longer a close call. Should Prince Harry and Meghan be formally stripped of their titles? 67% say yes, 33% say no. Who do you support in Harry's row with the king? 64% say Charles, 36% say Harry. Now, it's no surprise, given that in the interview, Harry, one of the most privileged men in the world, who had every benefit in life provided to him by the British state and by his birthright, claimed that he is now the victim of an establishment stitch-up.
I have had it described to me, once people knew about the facts, that this is an good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and that's
utterly nuts. Utterly nuts. So let me bring in my superstar panel. Father Calvin Robinson, host of Common Sense Crusade on lotuseaters.com, and Ben Habib, the chairman of the Great British Pack. Father Calvin, enough is enough, isn't it? I know this is a very emotionally difficult situation for King Charles, given his cancer battle and given the fact that he remains, I guess, upset about this estrangement from his son. But Prince William is feeling none of this and is putting in place plans to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles the moment he becomes king. Isn't the question, though, for Charles, given that this is becoming more egregious, more embarrassing for the royal family, more damaging actually for Brand Britain, can he really afford to wait? Doesn't action need to be taken now?
I don't think there's anything the king can do. I think if the king attempts to strip them of their titles now, it will cause more drama than it's worth. He should have stripped them when they left the country in 2020, to be honest with you. When the king passes away and Prince William takes over, that might be a new transitional period, so that might be a perfect time to do it, to remove them of their titles, which they should no longer hold, because they're not working royals, and they are celebrities in LA. But absolutely, they should have their titles gone, but I don't think now is the right time for the king to do it, to be honest with you.
Ben Habib, how do you feel about this one? Because of course it is difficult in the sense that it would require an act of parliament, but this is not going away. And the problem is, every time Harry and Meghan do something more ridiculous, the public become increasingly angry.
According to Dan Wootton, a new poll reveals that a staggering 67% of Brits now want Harry and Meghan to be stripped of their royal titles. And honestly, can you blame them? After that BBC interview where Harry essentially suggested that the government and the royal family are conspiring to kill him, the public has had enough. This isn't just about family drama anymore. It's about protecting the monarchy's integrity.
And there is an insanity, is there not, in the fact that we have someone in our line of succession, that we have someone who is still able to use their HRA titles despite the Sandringham Summit agreed with Queen Elizabeth II, who hates our country, who hates our people, who's claimed we're all racist Brexiteers. Seriously, that's what he said in the Netflix documentary, and who has two children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, in the line of succession, yet he will not allow them to visit the United Kingdom. I'm sorry, I believe as a monarchist, this starts to become untenable.
Well, if it's an establishment stitch-up, I'd like to be stitched up in the way he's been stitched up all his life.
Tell me about
it. All the privilege, richness, and then opportunities, entitlement, etc. he's had, he should be extremely grateful. I think I agree with Calvin. Any attempt now to strip him of his title would just put more fuel on the fire. It would give him greater cause to complain that he's, woe betide me, I've been treated so badly, etc., etc. In a way, I wish we could just ignore Harry. And I agree with you, though. He does seem to hold the country, his family, the people in contempt. But of course, he's not alone. There's so many people on the public stage. Keir Starmer, for one, who I think absolutely ticks those boxes. And by that measure, he should be stripped of his prime ministerial position. But, here we are. And we just have to see what the future holds.
But the thing is, he has, Father Calvin, been really resentful, it feels like, of England and the English people for a long time. And he slagged off England again, Father Calvin, in the BBC interview.
I mean, if he's not comfortable in the United Kingdom anymore and he's happier up in Santa Barbara with his LA friends, maybe he should stay there, seek residency. Maybe he should renounce his titles, actually. Maybe he should do the honorable thing and say, I'm no longer working as a royal. I don't need to sustain these titles. I'm going to build my own legacy. I'm going to create my own brand. And they've got their own little label going on with their podcasts and whatever. Focus on that. But I think you're right in that. Or Ben was right in that we need to just ignore Harry and Meghan now. And I think that's what the King should do. That's what Prince William should do for the time being, because every single time they pop their heads up, they make matters worse. And so if we just say, well, you can just keep yelling in the wind as long as you like, you're not going to have any impact on our country anymore, then they lose all influence. They don't have any influence here in America. No one particularly cares about what they're doing. There was a bit of excitement when they first came out because they were royals, but then everyone just kind of got bored of them. And so there's this hatred for them in the UK. There's apathy for them in the US. So what's left, really? I don't know.
Well, what's interesting to me, though, is that we are starting to see more mainstream political criticism of Harry and Meghan. So Douglas Murray and Nigel Farage have both spoken out after the Prince Harry interview. Now, given Nigel Farage is currently the bookie's favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, I found his comments on GB News particularly interesting.
And Dan's right. The BBC has been incredibly biased, giving Harry a free pass to air wild conspiratorial claims without any evidence. They've apologised, but is it too little too late? And with Harry dragging King Charles's cancer battle into the spotlight for sympathy, the public backlash is growing. Here's where things get really explosive. According to insiders, Prince William is done playing nice. His response to the idea of Harry and Meghan keeping their titles? Over my dead body. Let that sink in. This is the future King of England, basically declaring war on his brother. And can you blame him?
Watch this.
And Nigel, good to see the King so well. Or apparently so well.
It's good to see the King here.
Yeah.
I understand the treatment he's undergoing is pretty intense.
Yeah, sure, that's right.
He's putting a very, very brave face on it. And it was why the comments from his youngest son the other day were so inappropriate.
Gross.
So inappropriate. Unnecessary.
And why?
And the King had spoken last week.
Yeah.
Quite movingly.
He did.
About what it was like to have cancer, to have serious cancer.
Yes.
To say, look, it happens to me, it happens to you.
Prince or pauper.
And I thought, yeah, absolutely. And I thought that that was, of all the things that Harry said, that was the one that I thought was the most upsetting.
It's another sign why the King and his other son, can never trust Harry.
Never.
Ever again.
No, there's no conversation they can ever have with him.
Because he'll be on Netflix.
Yeah.
And this really interested me, Ben Habib. I mean, I know you can argue Nigel Farage doesn't do things by the book, and he did choose to raise Prince Harry and those comments himself, but it's something that senior British politicians have always tried to keep away from.
Yeah, and this is of course one of Nigel's greatest strengths. He's prepared to, on occasion, discuss things that other people aren't, and so good on him. And it is a topic that I think probably if you are Prime Minister, you do need to have a view on. I don't think it's right that people should shy away from it. And while we're at it, perhaps we should discuss, particularly I'd be interested in Calvin's views, the King's position itself, because he is the head of the church. He's the constitutional head of this country. And it seems to me he himself is diluting his own position down, claiming, I think, almost that he's head of a multi-faith society. And, that's not where we're at. And
the whole thing seems to be more interested at the moment. And by the way, I always say huge sympathy at the moment for King Charles's cancer battle, but I think you're right, Ben. We can't ignore the fact, and Father Calvin, feel free to weigh in, but we can't ignore the fact that he seems to be pushing Islam more than he is Christianity at the moment.
Indeed. And we had Shrove Tuesday, Ash Wednesday, we had the whole of Lent, and we had nothing from the king. We had a really lukewarm message on Easter, which even mentioned Judaism and Islam in the message of for the Christian highlight of the Christian year, the biggest holy day, the biggest holiday of the Christian year. It mentions two other faiths in it. How on the alternative side of things, throughout Ramadan, there were mentions of iftar. The king was seen creating little iftar gifts and feast-breaking gifts of dates and stuff. And the message was constant on Islam throughout that period. So it was really, again, two-tiered, as we see with many things from the establishment of the UK. And this is wrong, because the king is the head of the Church of England. He is the supreme governor of the Church of England. He does swear an allegiance to the Christian God, to Jesus Christ in his coronation. He swears to be the Protestant Anglican King of England and the Presbyterian King of Scotland. And so he should be proselytizing the message of Christianity. He should be saying there is one truth to Christianity. He should not be saying there are multiple truths or there are multiple gods or multiple ways of worshiping God. That's just not our way. And people that want to say, well, we're a liberal secular society, you may want that to be true, but it's not technically true. Just as I wouldn't expect an imam or a faith leader in an Islamic country to be saying, oh, bringing Easter or Christ into their Ramadan message. It just wouldn't make sense in the context. So if the king cannot be explicitly Christian, if he cannot fulfill his role and his oaths, he should abdicate, actually. But the problem is, I don't think Prince William would be any better. I've been a royalist and a monarchist my whole life. This last year, I've resigned as patron of the Royalist Society because I find it incredibly difficult to support these Windsors, these Saxburg family. I don't think they inhabit anymore what it means to be a Christian king.
Harry's gone from being the cheeky, lovable royal to a full-blown traitor, using his royal status to trash the family on a global stage while demanding special treatment and security. William's ready to act. But what about King Charles? Is he too emotionally conflicted to make the tough call? Or is he waiting for the right moment to cut Harry and Meghan loose once and for all? And then there's Father Calvin Robinson, who suggests the best strategy isn't to strip them of their titles. It's to ignore them completely. And honestly, that might be the smartest move. Every time Harry and Meghan open their mouths, they dig themselves deeper into a hole.
Well, Prince William bin Habib has made it clear that he's not a particularly religious guy, which is obviously quite awkward given the fact that he is going to become the head of the Church of England relatively soon. And it was something I think that his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, was always concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very sad that the head of the Church of England, the constitutional head of this country, has turned his back on the history and importance of his constitutional position. I think it's terribly, terribly sad. What hope can we have of restoring the United Kingdom to its right constitutional, political, cultural position if the head of the country doesn't understand what it means? It's very difficult. And, I think we need to have this conversation, because if we are in it for restoring the country, and I believe Father Calvin and I are both in it for restoring the country, then I think we've got to be brave and challenge these issues. I too, for many, many years, had my doubts about Charles, never voiced them because I'm a monarchist. I believe in the constitutional construct of the United Kingdom, and I didn't want to rock the constitutional boat. But he's doing and saying things now which I find absolutely irreconcilable with his position. And so I don't know how we get back to a position of stability, particularly if Prince William is going to pick up the same chalice and go with it. We need them at the very least to understand the importance of their own position.
The issue with the Prince Harry interview with the BBC is the fact that, just like with Oprah Winfrey, he made a whole load of fanciful claims, many of which could not be backed up by any evidence, many of which were conspiratorial at best. And of course, as ever with the BBC, they decided, because he's their guy, he's their woke prince, to give him a completely clear ride with no challenging and no wider challenging in the coverage that surrounded the interview. So here's just one example of what Prince Harry said. Now, this whole thing is so nuts, right? And there were so many questions that the BBC could have asked Prince Harry directly about that. Okay, so why is it safe for you to travel to Ukraine? Why is it safe for you to travel to Colombia? In fact, in the past 24 hours, we've just learned that Prince Harry actually took his son Archie for his 6th birthday to a state in Mexico where there is a US travel warning to avoid the area because of the number of kidnappings that have gone on around it. But the BBC has now had to admit a lapse in its editorial standards following that Prince Harry interview, because they never cross-examined his rant and just gave him an uninterrupted platform. So what they needed to do, of course, was get some reaction and challenge him. But when BBC Radio 4 actually discussed the interview the following day and spoke to a former close protection officer, they had to issue a clarification which read, "The programme covered the latest developments in the story of Prince Harry and his legal case around protection for him and his family in the UK, and interviewed former close protection officer Richard H. to get a broader understanding of security considerations. Claims were repeated that the process had been an establishment stitch-up, and we failed to properly challenge this and other allegations. The case is ultimately the responsibility of the Home Office, and we should have reflected their statement." And that's what's so embarrassing about the BBC here, isn't it, Father Calvin? Just like Oprah Winfrey did, they are not treating Harry's claims as contestable, which they most definitely are.
Father Calvin argues that by not reacting, the monarchy can let them fade into irrelevance, especially now that even the American public is losing interest in their never-ending victim narrative. Nigel Farage isn't holding back either, and he's got a point. He calls Harry's comments about his father's cancer battle gross and inappropriate, especially considering that King Charles has been nothing but dignified throughout his health struggle. And here's Harry, using it as yet another excuse to cry victim. Farage even suggests that Harry has officially crossed the line, making any chance of reconciliation impossible. And honestly, after that BBC interview, can you see how Charles or William could ever trust Harry again? Every conversation they have could end up on Netflix or in a new book. It's a dangerous game, and Harry's playing it alone.
Yeah, it's not really an interview. It's a propaganda piece. But I think they're excited that the fact that they've got an interview with the prince, and so they let him get away with things that he wouldn't let anyone else get away with, unfortunately. I remember, so we watched this. Well, we watched clips of it live last week on Friday, didn't we, when it first came out? So since then, I've got to see more of it. And he goes on to say, "My status has not changed. The reason I deserve or I'm entitled to all of the security is because my status has not changed." And that's a weird level of denial, because his status has clearly changed from an active working royal who goes out there and does the job, to someone who's living in a foreign country doing podcasts and media work for a living. Like, does he still see himself as the spare, or does he see himself as a member of the LA elite? I'm not sure. I think he probably still sees himself as a member of the working royal family.
I mean, he does. And it's actually very sad. Radar Online has reported over the past week, you remember those beautiful scenes from earlier in the week of Prince Louis and Prince George with Catherine and William and the veterans all on the balcony at Buckingham Palace. And Prince Harry had just been torturing himself by watching these images over and over again and thinking what might have been. Now, Douglas Murray, I thought he had a very good point about all of this when he was interviewed by Rita Panahi on Sky News Australia. Point, isn't it? As soon as you try and negotiate something like that in public, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. I thought Douglas put that brilliantly. And I thought his closing quip was even better than the exposition itself when he said that, and the way to do it is not to go on air and say, no one's speaking to me. No, it's very sad. I tell you, just as a bit of a digression, have you noticed that Harry's accent is changing? He's got an American lilt to it. Have you noticed that?
Yes, he does.
So he's clearly acclimatizing to his new home.
It's that weird sort of like tech boy accent, isn't it, Calvin? When like Brits go to America and they sort of, you can't get that, Father Calvin. Don't start talking like Prince Harry.
If you ever hear me start talking like a Los Angeles tech boy, please tell me to my face, because I hate that so much. But it is difficult. You know what? Out here, it's hard for an Englishman. We watch American films and TV all the time, so that we understand them, but they don't understand us. You say something like simple, can you put the rubbish out? Huh?
Okay, so you have sympathy for Harry there. I guess he has to be understood. Look, absolutely brilliant stuff. What a superstar panel today. Father Calvin Robinson, host of the Common Sense Crusade on lotuseaters.com, and of course Fox and Father as well on YouTube, and Ben Habib, who is the chair of the Great British Pax. So good to have both of you with us today.
And here's the million-dollar question. What will King Charles do now? Ben Habib argues that the time to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles was 3 years ago when they first left the UK. But now, with the public demanding action and the monarchy's reputation on the line, the pressure is mounting. If Charles doesn't act soon, will he risk looking weak and ineffective? Or is he just waiting for the moment when Prince William can do the dirty work? All right, that's it for today's explosive breakdown of Harry and Meghan's title crisis and the fallout from Harry's BBC meltdown. If you think it's time for King Charles to strip them of their titles, hit that like button, subscribe for more unfiltered royal drama, and drop a comment below. Should Charles act now or wait for William to take the throne? Let me know what you think.